Sarah Parker always knew she was different. The way her skin seemed to shimmer ever so slightly in moonlight, how she could hold her breath for impossibly long periods, and the strange dreams that plagued her nights. Dreams of crystalline cities floating among purple clouds and beings of pure light dancing through starlit skies. Her mother, Eleanor Parker, had taken the secret to her grave 3 years ago. On her deathbed, she finally told Sarah the truth about her father, not the kindly human merchant sailor who had supposedly died at sea before Sarah's birth, but something else entirely. Someone else. His name was Azrael, Eleanor had whispered, her voice trembling. He came to Earth as part of the first diplomatic mission from Proxima Centauri, 15 years before the Mars colonies were even established. He was beautiful, Sarah, not in a human way, but in the way that Aurora Borealis is beautiful. In the way that the birth of stars is beautiful. Sarah had listened, transfixed, as her mother described the whirlwind romance that followed. How Azrael had broken every protocol, risked his position, his very life, to be with Eleanor. How he had to leave Earth when his presence was discovered, promising to return but never making it back. The Proxima government had imprisoned him for his transgression, and Eleanor had raised their hybrid daughter alone, always watching the stars. Now, at 35, Sarah had built a life for herself despite her differences. She was a xenobotanist at the Mars-Earth Scientific Exchange Program, one of the few remaining collaborative projects between Earth and its increasingly hostile Martian colonies. Her unique genetic makeup gave her an intuitive understanding of alien flora that her fully human colleagues couldn't match. She had even married, though that ended in divorce after 5 years when her husband couldn't handle the strangeness that seemed to follow her. But everything changed when Thomas Kane arrived at the facility. Her ex-husband, his 25-year-old son from his first marriage, recently appointed as the new head of security for the exchange program. She had met him briefly at her wedding years ago, when he was just a teenager. Now he was a man, and something about him called to the alien part of her soul in a way that both thrilled and terrified her. Their first meeting in the facility, as hydroponics lab sent electricity through her veins. He had grown into his features. Sharp jawline, intense green eyes, and a quiet confidence that reminded her of the few memories she had of Azrael from her childhood dreams. "Dr. Parker," he had said, extending his hand. "It's been a while." The moment their fingers touched, Sarah felt a surge of the power she usually kept carefully contained. The nearest plants shuddered in their growth chambers, and for a split second, she could have sworn she saw recognition flash in Thomas' eyes, as if he too had felt something extraordinary pass between them. That night, Sarah lay awake in her quarters, watching Mars' larger moon Phobos cast red shadows across her ceiling. She knew she should keep her distance from Thomas. The political situation between Earth and Mars was deteriorating rapidly. Rumors of war grew louder each day, and even if that weren't true, he was her former stepson. The taboo alone should have been enough to stop her thoughts from wandering in his direction. But as she drifted off to sleep, her dreams were filled not with the usual visions of her father, his homeworld, but of Thomas, his face, his eyes somehow containing all the mystery and allure of the alien heritage she had spent her life trying to understand. She didn't know then that within weeks, those eyes would look at her with the same longing she felt. She couldn't have known that their forbidden attraction would become entangled with the fate of two worlds, or that the secret of her true nature, when finally revealed, would set in motion events that would either bridge the divide between Earth and Mars, or tear humanity's fractured civilization completely apart. In the darkness of her room, as Phobos completed another circuit of the red planet outside her window, Sarah made a decision. She would tell Thomas the truth about who and what she really was. She just hoped that when she did, it would destroy everything she had worked so hard to build. Little did she know, forces were already in motion that would make her personal revelations seem insignificant compared to the cosmic drama about to unfold. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see what would happen when the daughter of two worlds finally embraced her destiny. The hydroponics lab had become their sanctuary. During the late shifts, when the facility hummed with the quiet efficiency of minimal staffing, Sarah and Thomas found themselves drawn there like moths to flame. They told themselves it was professional. He needed to understand the security requirements of their most sensitive experiments. She needed to explain the importance of maintaining specific atmospheric conditions. But they both knew these were excuses. One night, As she demonstrated the proper handling of a particularly volatile Martian fungus, Sarah's control slipped. The strange energy that coursed through her veins, the heritage she'd spent a lifetime suppressing, suddenly flared. The fungus responded, its bioluminescent spores creating a spectacular light show that filled the lab with shifting patterns of purple and gold. Thomas didn't run. He didn't even step back. Instead, he moved closer, his eyes reflecting the otherworldly display. "I always knew there was something different about you," he said softly. "Even when I was younger, at the wedding. I felt it then, but I was too young to understand." Sarah's hands trembled as she tried to contain the energy, to force the fungus back into dormancy. "Thomas, show me," he whispered. "Show me who you really are." And so, surrounded by the gentle glow of alien life forms, Sarah told him everything. About Azrael, about her mother, the secret, about the dreams and abilities she'd hidden her entire life. As she spoke, she allowed her control to fade completely for the first time since childhood. Her skin began to shimmer with an internal light, and the plants around them responded to her presence, reaching toward her with an almost sentient yearning. "Beautiful," Thomas breathed, reaching out to touch her luminescent skin. "You were the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Their first kiss was inevitable, electric, and terrible in its implications. As their lips met, the entire hydroponics lab erupted in a symphony of light and movement, every specimen responding to the surge of emotion and alien energy that passed between them. But their moment of connection was shattered by the facility's emergency sirens. Red warning lights replaced the gentle bioluminescence, and Captain Marina Chen's voice crackled over the intercom. "All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Repeat. All personnel to emergency stations." Thomas pulled away, his security training taking over. "The Martian separatist movement," he said grimly. They've been threatening to attack Earth-aligned facilities. I know." Sarah nodded, already moving to secure the most dangerous specimens. "Go." As she watched him run from the lab, Sarah felt a crushing weight of premonition. Their worlds were about to collide in ways neither of them could have predicted. The growing tensions between Earth and its Mars colonies had reached a breaking point, and she and Thomas had just added a dangerous personal complication to an already volatile situation. That night, as she helped coordinate the emergency lockdown of the facility's biological samples, Sarah received a highly encrypted message on her private channel. The sender's ID made her blood run cold. It was from Proxima Centauri, from someone claiming to be speaking on behalf of her imprisoned father. "The war that's coming," the message read, "is not what you think. There are forces moving in the shadows, daughter of Azrael, using the conflict between Earth and Mars to mask something far more dangerous. Your father believes you may be the only one who can stop it. But you all need to embrace everything you are, human and Proximan both. The time for hiding is over." Sarah stared at the message, her mind racing. Outside her lab, she could hear the sounds of the facility preparing for a potential attack. Somewhere in the building, Thomas was coordinating security measures, probably already wrestling with the implications of what he learned about her. And now this, a message from the world of her alien father, hinting at deeper conspiracies behind the growing conflict. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the power pulse beneath her skin. The message was right about one thing: the time for hiding was indeed over. But would revealing herself to the world bring peace or only add fuel to an already volatile situation? As if in answer to her thoughts, another alarm began to sound, this one indicating incoming ships entering Mars' atmosphere without proper clearance. Sarah looked out the reinforced windows of her lab at the red Martian sky, watching as multiple bright points of light began to streak through the thin atmosphere. The war, it seemed, was about to begin. And she and Thomas were caught not just between Earth and Mars, but between all of humanity and whatever hidden forces were pulling the strings from the shadows. She opened her communication channel to security. She needed to warn Thomas about the message, about what might really be happening. But as her finger hovered over the call button, she hesitated. How much should she reveal? And more importantly, would he still look at her the same way once he understood the full implications of what she was? The lights streaking across the sky grew brighter, and Sarah Parker, daughter of two worlds, made her choice. The next 12 hours changed everything. The incoming ships weren't Martian separatists as everyone had initially assumed. They were Proximan vessels, their crystalline hulls refracting the pale sunlight in ways that made them almost invisible to conventional sensors. Sarah recognized them instantly, not from memory, but from something deeper, more instinctual. They were her father, his people, and they had finally come. But they weren't alone. As the facility's sensors struggled to track the Proximan ships, another fleet appeared, this one emerging from behind Phobos. Martian separatist vessels, their hulls painted with the red and black insignia of the Free Mars movement. The two fleets converged on the facility, and in that moment, Sarah understood the terrible truth. This wasn't a coincidence. The Proximans and the Separatists were working together. Thomas found her in the midst of the chaos, as facility staff rushed to implement emergency protocols. We're being ordered to evacuate, he said, his voice tight with controlled tension. But we're not going with the others. You know something about this, Don? Do you? Sarah's skin was shimmering more intensely now, her alien heritage responding to the presence of her father, his people. They're here for me, she said quietly. The Proximans, and probably the Separatists too. This whole war, I think it's been about me all along. Or at least, about what I represent. Before Thomas could respond, Captain Chen burst into the lab. Kane, we need you at the defense station. And Dr. Parker. She paused, her eyes widening as she took in Sarah's luminescent appearance. What the hell? It's complicated, Thomas started to say, but he was cut off by a massive explosion that rocked the entire facility. Through the reinforced windows, they could see Proximan ships engaging with the facility's automated defense systems, their energy weapons creating spectacular auroras in the thin Martian atmosphere. No time, Sarah said. Captain, you need to know. I received a message from Proxima Centauri. This attack, the whole conflict between Earth and Mars, it is being orchestrated. The Proximans have been manipulating both sides, using the Separatists as proxies. They're after something bigger. And what exactly would that be, Dr. Parker? Chen demanded. Me, Sarah replied. Or more specifically, what I prove is possible. The successful hybridization of human and Proximan DNA. My father was imprisoned for it, but I think there were others who saw it as an opportunity. A way to change humanity. To force the next step in human evolution. Another explosion rocked the facility. Thomas moved instinctively closer to Sarah, his hand finding hers. The contact sent a surge of energy through them both, and suddenly the plants in the lab began to react, their movements becoming almost defensive, forming a living barrier around the three of them. My God, Chen whispered, watching the display of alien power. What are you? It's the future, a new voice said. They turned to see a tall figure standing in the doorway. Humanoid but clearly not human, its skin shifting with patterns of light that matched Sarah's own. Or at least, one possible future. Father? Sarah breathed, recognizing him instantly from her dreams. Azrael stepped into the lab, his movement liquid and graceful despite the obvious signs of his long imprisonment. Sarah, he said softly, I'm so sorry. I never wanted any of this for you. But now we have no choice. The extremists among my people, they've spent years planning this. They want to use your existence to justify a forced merger of our species. They convinced the Martian separatists that this will give them an advantage over Earth. But really, they plan to transform all of humanity, willing or not. Thomas stepped forward, placing himself between Sarah and her father. And what do you want? Azrael's eyes, so much like Sarah's, fixed on Thomas with an unnerving intensity. I want to protect my daughter, and to stop a war that could destroy 3 worlds. He turned back to Sarah. But I need your help. You neither human nor Proximan. You read something new, something they didn't expect. You have abilities that even they don't understand. The facility shuddered again, and emergency lights began flashing. Captain Chen, this communicator, crackled with reports of breaches in multiple sections. They were running out of time. Sarah looked at Thomas, seeing in his eyes not fear or disgust at what she was, but unwavering support. She thought of her mother, who had loved across the stars and paid the price for it. She thought of Mars and Earth, teetering on the brink of a war they didn't understand. And she thought of her own power, the energy that had lived inside her all these years, waiting for this moment. What do you need me to do? She asked her father. Azrael's response was cut off by the sound of breaking glass and the hiss of escaping air. The lab, its reinforced windows had finally given way to the battle outside. As emergency force fields snapped into place, Sarah made out dark figures moving through the chaos. Proxima soldiers, their armor rippling with the same light that coursed through her veins. They were out of time. Whatever choice she was going to make, it had to be now. The next few moments seemed to stretch into eternity. As the Proxima soldiers advanced through the breach, Sarah felt something unlock inside her. A power she'd always known was there but had never fully embraced. Her skin wasn't just shimmering now. It was radiating waves of pure energy that made the air itself crackle with potential. Sarah, Dawn, T. Azrael called out, but it was too late. The hybrid daughter of two worlds raised her hands, and every plant in the hydroponics lab responded to her call. Martian fungi, earth vegetables, and experimental hybrids. They all began to grow at impossible speeds, weaving together into a living barrier between her group and the advancing soldiers. The plants moved with purpose, with intelligence, guided by the combined power of her human intuition and Proxima energy manipulation. Thomas stared in awe, but didn't back away. Instead, he drew his weapon while staying close to her. "Whatever you're doing," he said, "keep doing it." Captain Chen had taken up a defensive position, her tactical training kicking in despite the otherworldly situation. "Dr. Parker, if you have any more surprises, now would be the time." The Proxima soldiers hesitated at the display of power. This was clearly more than they expected. Through the living wall of vegetation, Sarah could see them conferring, their armor pulsing with communication signals she could somehow understand. They were scared, she realized aloud. They never expected me to have this level of control. They thought I'd be weaker. Azrael moved to stand beside his daughter, his own power adding to hers, strengthening the barrier. "The extremists among our people believe that human DNA dilutes our abilities," he explained quickly. "They never understood that hybridization doesn't weaken, it creates something entirely new. Something potentially stronger than either parent species." A new voice cut through the chaos. Cold, artificial, speaking in both human language and Proxima energy patterns simultaneously. "How disappointing, Azrael. You taught the aberration to use her powers." Through gaps in the plant barrier, Sarah saw another figure approach, a Proxima woman whose very presence seemed to distort the space around her. Unlike the soldiers, her skin didn't shimmer with light. It seemed to absorb it, creating an effect like looking into a deep void. "Vazra," Azrael said, his voice tight with recognition. "You behind all this?" "Of course," the void-like woman replied. "Someone had to take action. Humanity is spreading through the stars like a virus, colonizing Mars, looking toward other systems. They were chaotic, unpredictable, but with our guidance, with our DNA, they could be so much more. Your daughter proves it is possible." "You were talking about forced evolution," Thomas spoke up, his grip tightening on his weapon. "Genetic manipulation of entire populations without their consent." Vazra, his dark eyes fixed on him with cold amusement. "And you must be the human she is bonded with. How fascinating. Tell me, Sarah, does he understand what you really are? What you represent? The power you could have if you stopped clinging to your human weaknesses?" Sarah felt Thomas's free hand find hers, squeezing it firmly. In that touch, she felt everything he couldn't say aloud. His acceptance, his support, his love. Not despite what she was, but because of it. Because she represented the best of both worlds, not an aberration to be feared or a weapon to be used. "I understand exactly what I am," Sarah replied, her voice growing stronger. "I am the daughter of Eleanor Parker, who taught me that love doesn't care about species or politics. I am the daughter of Azrael, who risked everything to follow his heart. I am a scientist who believes in building bridges, not forcing change. And I am a woman who is tired of hiding what she is." The plants around them began to pulse with bioluminescence, matching the rhythm of her words. Outside, through the breach in the lab's windows, the battle between ships seemed to pause, as if the combatants could sense the power building within the facility. "You can stop what is coming," Vazra said. "The Martian separatists are already deploying our bioweapons in Earth's major cities. Within days, the transformation will begin. Those who survive will become like you, hybrid beings ready to be guided by their Proximan superiors. Evolution, guided by intelligence rather than chance. No, Sarah said quietly, then louder. No, I am showing you a different way. She released Thomas' hand and stepped forward through her own plant barrier. Her power flared brighter than ever, and suddenly every piece of vegetation in the lab, every experimental specimen, every hybrid creation began to resonate with her energy. Sarah, Thomas called out in alarm. But she knew what she was doing. For the first time in her life, she fully understood her purpose. She wasn't a mistake or a weapon. She was a bridge. And bridges weren't built by force. As Vazra raised her hands to attack, Sarah Parker, daughter of Earth and Proxima, made her stand. The future of three worlds hung in the balance. And love, not power, would determine the outcome. What happened next would be debated by historians for decades to come. Some would say it was impossible, a mass hallucination brought on by atmospheric anomalies. Others would call it a miracle. But for those present in the hydroponics lab that day, it was simply the moment when Sarah Parker finally embraced everything she was meant to be. As Vazra's attack came, a wave of void-like energy that seemed to consume light itself, Sarah didn't fight back. Instead, she opened herself completely, allowing her hybrid nature to express itself in its purest form. The energy that erupted from her wasn't just light or power. It was pure connection. Every plant in the lab, every hybrid specimen she ever worked with, began to resonate with her energy. But it didn't stop there. The wave of connection spread outward, touching everyone present, human, Proximan, and hybrid alike. In that moment, they could all feel what Sarah felt, see what she saw. Thomas experienced it first, gasping as his consciousness expanded. Through Sarah's power, he could suddenly sense the complex web of life around them, feel the subtle energy patterns that the Proximans used for communication. He understood, on a cellular level, that the divide between species was an illusion. This, Sarah said, her voice echoing with harmonics that everyone could now perceive. This is what I am. Not a weapon, not an aberration. I am proof that we're all connected. That barriers only exist because we believe in them. Vazra staggered, her void-like appearance flickering as Sarah's energy touched her. Impossible, she whispered. This level of integration, it shouldn't be. My mother was human, Sarah continued, moving forward. She taught me about love, about acceptance, about the strength that comes from embracing who you are. My father is Proximate. He taught me that rules can be broken when they stand in the way of truth. And Thomas, she looked back at him, her eyes glowing with affection. Thomas taught me that love doesn't care about boundaries or backgrounds. The battle outside had completely stopped. Through the breach in the lab's windows, they could see both Proximan and Martian ships hanging motionless in the thin atmosphere, their crews caught in the wave of connection emanating from Sarah. Captain Chen lowered her weapon, tears streaming down her face as she experienced the unity Sarah was sharing. This changes everything, she whispered. No, Vazra made one last attempt, gathering her void-like energy. You, reproving our point. This power could transform humanity. You, right, Sarah said softly, but not through force, not through fear. She reached out and took Vazra's hands in her own. Like this, through choice, through understanding. The moment their hands touched, Vazra's defenses crumbled. The void-like appearance faded, revealing her true form, beautiful and vulnerable, filled with the same light as all her people. Through their connection, Sarah could feel the fear that had driven her, the genuine belief that she was saving humanity from itself. I was wrong, Vazra admitted, her voice breaking. This is what evolution really looks like. The next few hours were a blur of activity. The Martian separatists, their connection to the Proximans revealed, stood down. Vazra's bioweapons were located and neutralized before they could be deployed. And most importantly, a new dialogue began, not just between Earth and Mars, but between all three worlds. Sarah found herself at the center of it all, working with both human and Proximan scientists to understand and document what she had done. Her ability to bridge the gap between species made her the perfect ambassador for a new age of cooperation. But in the quiet moments, she always found her way back to Thomas. They stood together now in the restored hydroponics lab, watching the sun set through the repaired windows, painting the Martian sky in shades of pink and gold. You know, Thomas said, pulling her close. When I was a teenager at your wedding to my father, I never imagined we'd end up here. Sarah laughed, her skin shimmering softly in the fading light. Life has a way of surprising us. Are you okay with all of this? Being with someone who is different. Thomas turned to face her, his eyes reflecting the same love and acceptance he'd shown from the beginning. Sarah, you're not different. Just you. And you were exactly who both worlds needed you to be. She kissed him then, and the plants around them swayed in response to her happiness. Outside, Earth was visible as a bright star in the darkening sky, while the crystalline ships of the Proxima delegation glittered in orbit above them. Three worlds, once divided by fear and misunderstanding, now connected by the love of two people who had dared to cross the boundaries between them. Sarah Parker, daughter of Earth and Proxima, had finally found her place, not in one world or another, but in the spaces between them all, building bridges with every breath. And as she stood there in Thomas' arms, watching the stars emerge in the Martian night sky, she knew that this wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new chapters. And leave a comment. Your thoughts and feedback mean a lot to us. Together, we explore new horizons.